Welcome everyone once again to our regular weekly show on U2 Spain, where we ask the experts what you want to know about moving to Spain. I'm Skatz, hello, and today we'll be talking about what happens after you get your residency in Spain and your residency card or TIE, and what to do next, including making a will, registering at the health centre, preparing for your year 2 and 3 visa extension, etc. Plus, of course, we'll be answering viewers' questions from YouTube and Facebook on anything to do with moving to Spain. So stick around to the end and enjoy the show. Of course, you can join in on the live chat right now if you're watching live, or if you're not watching live, you can watch the recording and still ask questions in the comments below, and we'll answer them for you. And of course, within a few days of the live show, you can find the time codes for all of the answers you need in the video description below here. And that will save you having to scroll through and find them over and over again if you want to come back to an answer. So, welcome to U2 Spain. Cue the little theme tune. Just before we begin, don't forget you can get your very own U2 Spain t-shirts in a variety of colours, and hoodies and other goodies from our merchandise page. And you can post questions on the U2 Spain Facebook group and chat with people like you who are moving to Spain or have done so already. The links to all of those can be found in the video description below. And once again, we're going to be having some prizes to give away at the end of the show, including this very t-shirt. So settle down and enjoy. So without further ado, let's meet my guest for the day. It's Chris from Upsticks. Hola, Chris.
Hola. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Yes, all very well. A bit warmer than you, it looks like.
Yeah. Oh, look, it's quite cold up here in the montañas, and also we didn't have any heating on in the house last night, so I'm just trying to warm up. I've got a radiator on in here though, so it's all right.
But I've cheated. I've got the heating on the office, I have to say.
I'm slightly jealous, but never mind. I bought this lovely thing in Granada, and it's got a lovely lining on it. So this is my look for the rest of the winter, I think. Here we go. So we're talking about what happens after you get your TIE. That's obviously for people on the non-lucrative visa. And also we'll talk a bit about my experience. Of course, I'm an EU citizen and self-employed, so I'll talk about what happens there. So we talk about registering at the health centre first, because I've got a load of documents that I showed last week.
Yes, yeah, definitely. That's a good idea. So I mean, there's obviously you've had your own experience of registering with the healthcare as self-employed. I mean, with the TIE, it also relates to the withdrawal agreement people as well, because obviously you've got people who have switched their TIEs, green EU cards for now TIEs, and their declaration that they're beneficiaries of the withdrawal agreement, non-lucrative visa as well. I think the first thing before we start that, I'd say is there's one thing you always put in your calendar: the renewal dates. That's we keep it for our clients to remind them that renewal dates. First, when you get a TIE card in your hand, you want to have your renewal date and a reminder 3 months in advance just to get the paperwork underway. But yeah, so the healthcare centre.
Yeah, let's put this form up on the screen. This was. Let's see, I think this is my form. Is that the one with my name on it? Yes. So this is the one that I had to fill in. It also says COVID on the top. That's a reminder for them to put me up for a vaccination as well. So that's very relevant. So what can we say about this?
There's a couple of things before this. So you registered directly at the healthcare centre because being now self-employed in Spain, you had that certificate which proved that you had access to the healthcare system in Spain. If someone is coming on an S1 basis, then they would have needed to previously registered their S1 first with the Social Security. And when it is registered, they've received a certificate exactly the same as what you've got.
Yes, that's mine. That's on the screen now. There. Yep.
Exactly. And there may be a gap between, because you can't register your S1 until you receive your TIE card. And then they take a while to come through with that. Yours was pretty much automatic because it was, although it came from the day of your appointment, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
Yours was automatic, being self-employed. People on an S1 basis may have to wait a few months to get that certificate while it's being registered or while they're processing it. And people who are on an employment basis should receive it as quickly as what you did.
Yeah.
Um,
Perfect.
there is a there is a theory there, evidently, that and more and more and more the healthcare centres have access to Social Security to prove that you have this thing called the ALPA, so you're already signed on. When we did your residency, in fact, the lady who processed it actually checked on her computer and said, "Oh, if you'd have just said to me that he was autonomous, I could have checked, printed off a piece of paper, it would have been fine." But evidently, we go belts and braces all the time. Take your certificate with you just in case that system's not working. But yeah, so you need that proof that you've actually got access under whichever shape or form to the social healthcare system, and that's when you fill in this form, which you're going to tell us about your experience.
Yeah, my experience. Well, fortunately, I'd heard from the local grapevine that they speak very much all Spanish in the health centres, and quite right too. Really, it's up to us to learn the Spanish. So I thought, as my Spanish isn't up to it, I'll take a friend along, and he just took in the my question, and they gave him the forms back of everything that we needed. And it would have been very complicated for me to try and explain the fact that I've got an NIE number and I'm an EU citizen, but my wife hasn't, and she's just applying for a TIE at the moment. So it's two different forms, and I'll put up Liz's form in a minute just to show you. They look almost identical, but they've just got a slightly different tick box at the top there. But when I went back, because they said, "Oh, you just got to bring these forms back and bring in your NIE and your Padron," and there was one other thing as well. My no, I'll work. Say again.
Passport. Would it be you'd have to take your passport as well with you?
No, it's my NIE certificate. Did I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely needed that because it says as part of this form in that first big box where it has my name, I've got to tick NIE. I could have put passport or DNI, which is a Spanish citizen registration, isn't it?
Yeah. So the norm is normally your proof of residency, which if it's either TIE or resident EU card in your case, passport, which is a national identification document. So although we have residency, and even with the TIE, your passport is your national ID. So a TIE isn't valid if your passport's run out. And then obviously your proof of address, which is your Padron, dated within 90 days.
Yeah, surprisingly, I didn't actually need my passport for this one.
Really?
I was surprised they didn't need it, but they wanted it for Liz's registration because hers is kind of a temporary registration so that she could get the COVID jab. So what else is on this form? It's just address and postcode. There's very little on it to fill in, really. Just male, date of birth, and country of birth and nationality on there. So very little to fill in. It's quite easy to do, but in my case, when I got back, I thought I just had to hand the forms in, and I had a little statement prepared in Spanish just to say, "These are my forms. Can you just check them? One is for me, one is for my wife." And of course, the person behind the desk launched into lots of questions. So I was completely unprepared for that. And we were just talking before we came on air all about it's very difficult at the moment for people like us who lip read a lot when we're trying to understand Spanish. It makes a big difference. But of course, people are wearing masks and they're behind a screen. And you were also saying about how it seems to be a long stream with the voices don't go up and down, so it's difficult to know whether it's a question or not.
Yeah, no, it's difficult. I think now behind a screen with a mask on, I was saying, behind. I went to a couple of appointments in Almeria. And congratulations to those guys who got their TIE cars registered in Almeria this week. I know some of them watch the show, and I was there behind the screen, and the lady with the mask on, and I'm going a bit deaf anyway, and always when you do what I do years ago when we used to do the residencies for the Brits, where you sit at the other side of the desk, you always got a knack of trying to listen what they were talking about, so you could qualify objections before they came in with them. And now, obviously that's all gone. There's a screen, there's a mask, and it's not about understanding Spanish. It's about can't hear what's going on. Can't hear what you're saying. Looking at you talking, it's like I can't hear. So it is struggle. I sometimes I don't know. I can't hear sometimes. It might be just me being deaf, but
No, I've got that as well. I'm not very good in my right ear. My left ear is pretty good, but yeah, it's so difficult at the moment. And I rely very much on, as a self-employed person, I've got to interact with people. I've got to, what did my old friend call it back in the UK? You've got to schmooze. You got to get to know people and talk to them, and it's very much a face-to-face thing. And also, when I used to do stand-up comedy on stage, I didn't realize how much the expressions on my face, my whole face, my mouth, because I've got a very malleable face, it could squeeze into lots of different shapes, and how important that was when I was on stage for getting laughs. Because if suddenly we were in a club where the lighting was from the side or it was from below, people couldn't see half of my face, and we didn't get the same level of laughs that we got before. So
yeah.
I know that from experience that it's just talking to people and seeing their smile. It's so difficult wandering around the streets of Competa at the moment, and trying to make your eyes do all of the expressing yourself. It's just so difficult. Nobody can see the smiles. I might get one of those masks with a big smile on it. That might help.
Yeah, expressionist masks. But yeah, it's tough at the moment. It really is when you go into an office or something. You're doing something. That's big skills with the person contact. So I find a lot of the time, and you'll find this when you're going in somewhere. And I don't know if this was your experience with the medical centre, is that the person behind the desk will be talking to you, but they're not. They're just really explaining the problem which they're going to resolve themselves anyway. So sometimes it's good just to let them, just nod. Just let them resolve. There's not, if you know that the paperwork's correct, there may be an objection, there may be a muffle, there may be something, but 99% of the time, if you just, hand the power over, you'll find that eventually the stamped piece of paper will come through. There'll be something that they may have to either resolve themselves in their own head or speak to somebody over the desk and resolve it that way. But as long as you just, don't get too involved, I find that unless there's actually a specific question to you, it's best just to let them crack on.
Yeah. Fortunately, I had somebody English who was next in the queue, and when I couldn't get what the question was, she hopped in and said, "I think what she's trying to ask you is," and it just said, she was only asking, "Do you need your booster jab?"
All right.
So it was an easy question, but I just didn't get it. I just don't know what the words booster and jab are in Spanish. Obviously, I still don't know, but I'm going to learn that today.
So they're just going back to the healthcare thing. So obviously, it relates nicely what Liz has done for her registration, because that is what a lot of people on private healthcare will be doing. Because obviously, people who are on private healthcare are receiving their healthcare not through the state, but through the private system and in different doctors and in different hospitals. But they're still having to go and register as with the healthcare centre to get the COVID jabs, which would have been exactly what Liz has done there. She'll eventually switch to a state system, which means a little tick. It's contributionary, should we say. But at the moment, she's done what somebody in the private system would have done, which means that you registered, you know, they can give you your boosters and everything. You can't get a doctor as such.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's, as you can see, she's ticked the box C at the top. That's alta temporal. So that's for immigrants and strangers, extranjeros, foreigners.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's until she gets her TIE, and then she'll be. And I'm not sure what form we'll fill in to get her put on our family health card. I think that's what will happen next. But I'm just going to get an individual one to start with. So they tell me.
You'll get a card to start with, and then depending on whichever way the Liz's contributions are declared to Social Security, whether it's maybe it could be related to you because you're self-employed, maybe she'll set up self-employed herself. Whichever way that is, then she'll get a certificate, and they'll just adjust the registration with their health office, with their medical centre. Sorry.
Yeah. It's just another little note for people who live out in the countryside like we do, out in the campo. We have a system here where the correos, the postal service here, they don't deliver to places out in the countryside, and you can see why, because it takes hours to drive around the little tracks, and you need a 4x4 to get to a lot of houses. So I've obviously redacted the address on this one so that you can't see it, but I basically had to put in the postal address. Make sure you put in the postal address, or you won't get your card delivered in the post, or you'll have to go down to the correo's office and ask every day to see if the cards come through at your campo address. So that's one thing worth knowing.
Good shout.
There we go. So that's again an obvious thing to put on the forms there. It's not a difficult form to fill in. The first box is just what proof you're showing. It's your name and the place of birth, date of birth, and your the number, passport number, and then it's just the address and signature and date at the bottom. So yeah, very easy. There we go. And one thing I've found, and this is not just for Spain but for everywhere, it's always incredibly handy to have a scanner / printer for the whole residency process and afterwards, because I've needed to print things out or to copy things and then print them out, because a lot of it's done via email these days. So it's so handy to have one in your office and just be prepared to have things and take copies along. So, you know, the copy of the passport is really handy, and it's helpful in some places because it saves them having to make a copy. You know, you take your passport and a paper copy, you can just give it over at the desk and you know, and they'll see that it's the same.
Yeah. No, it's a very valid point. We still live with copies, don't we? Of everything when you need it, and also obviously now with online storage, you can keep. We scan everything and keep everything, even if there's paperwork that you don't think that you need. Well, it's a good idea just to scan it, and keep it on file anyway. You know, definitely.
Yeah, good. So actually, we've got. Just going to have a look at the chat online. Ghazi says good morning. Donna says good morning, and good morning from Rod and Lisa in the UK. Hello to all of you. Thank you for joining us. And Liz asked a question, and that is, if somebody in my position as non-EU with an EU spouse doesn't want to register as autonomo themselves, would I be able to get medical care just under my autonomo?
And your spouse is autonomo? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a yes.
Yeah. So you can relate. So if you have a spouse and one person is contributing as such and working, as long as you can prove that relationship, then you associate that person to the other person. You do it with children as well. When you go and register children, like when we registered our kids, they said, right, well, what person are you going to associate the healthcare to? So they associate it to the mother or the father.
Perfect. Liz is just making it clear that when I said postal address, it means the PO box that you have to buy to have your mail delivered in. They've got 2 or 3 places in town where you can do that, including Correos, the post office. But we've done it at the local shop which is handy. They also speak English at that particular shop, and it's the one that a lot of the expats use. So we did that one. It's also open for longer hours than the Correos. So, and it has shorter queues. So we thought that was better.
And they may accept couriers where the Correos don't accept couriers. They won't sign.
True,
so
yeah. They'll accept big boxes from Amazon, and there's a regular Amazon delivery, I think, there.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. Oh, good morning to Lee from Thameside Kickboxing once again. Welcome back, Lee.
Hey, Lee.
And okay, the other thing I was going to say was keep paperwork records, keep copies of everything on the cloud and actually in paper form as well, and on an external hard drive, because you will absolutely need some or all of these things at some point again in the future. And you may be in 10 years' time wanting to apply for citizenship, and you need a paper trail to prove you've been here for enough weeks, enough months. So get an envelope, put each year's little receipts. That's if you're using cash. Especially if you've got a bank card, then you're going to have a record on your bank statement anyway of you spending in the local shops. It doesn't count that you've spent money on Amazon, because you may have been anywhere in the world if you're having things sent to your house. But make sure it's spending locally, because that'll register on your bank statement. That's handy to know.
The first time Brits came across this was with the withdrawal agreement. Obviously, this has never been something that's happened before, and apart from the odd few that maybe have gone for nationality. But and then within the withdrawal agreement, when people were applying, then they started asking for stuff like, the receipts are okay, but if you get official facturas with your name on it, because receipt doesn't prove that it was actually you there. If you got a factura, if you've bought something, you can have your name and the address on it. But yeah, it's tough to prove with cash stuff, but it definitely, facturas, etc. It's a good idea to keep everything on file.
Yeah.
Why not? We have endless storage nowadays.
And our good friend Caroline Theriot says, good morning. I thought I'd mention that with my visa application, the consulate in Toronto lost all of my documents. I only found this out when visiting the foreigners office in Malaga over Christmas. And she says they kindly allowed me to submit photocopies of everything then and there, and my visa was processed 3 weeks after. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of photocopying everything. Yeah. Thank you, Carol.
No, definitely. Yeah, we do. When we close out files, when people have got their TIEs, we keep a file system, and we just literally just scan it all, stick it in a PDF, even when we get rid of the actual physical documents, and keep it on file, Yeah,
and Liz has just done some handy Spanish for us. Facturas, I think it's facturas, are receipts in Spanish for those who don't know.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, official receipt. Factura is an official receipt which carries your name and your NIE number, and sometimes your address. A recibo or factura simplificado is just a normal receipt.
So like you get from a till. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So if you're buying something and you're writing it off as a self-employed person, if it's an expense, you have to make sure you've got a factura.
Very well worth knowing. Yes, we talked about that when Antonio, our accountant, was on a few months ago. There we go. Oh, we have a question down here. Let's see. This is from Wendy and Lee. Lee is applying for a work visa. It's in process. I'm applying for non-lucrative visa, again in process. How easy it is for me to be on the SIP as a family member when Lee has the work visa?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I've never ever registered I assume it's probably more of a question for Antonio, actually. He does the healthcare registrations, but that shouldn't be a problem. Lee's working and you're not working. It's actually further proof that you're on a non-lucrative visa and that you're not working, because you're registering under your spouse. So, although, to be honest with you, I've never had experience with that scenario, I can't see that be a problem. And if anything, it's actually better for the non-lucrative visa renewal process, because you can prove that you're dependent on someone else who is working and you're not working. You're on a non-lucrative visa. So, yeah.
There we go. That's good news for you, Wendy.
Yeah, I can't see that be a problem.
So, one of the other things that you need to look at is getting a will drawn up.
Yeah, so obviously you need to get a will drawn up. If you've got assets in Spain, anything that you want to protect, and make sure they land in the right place. If the the unforeseen happens, then it's definitely a good idea to get a Spanish will. So if you've got property, even if your property is mortgaged, it's a good idea because generally you'll have an insurance related to that mortgage which will pay it off if something happens. Vehicles, even savings in an account or anything like that. It's a good idea to have a Spanish will. Okay, because if you've got a will in the UK that relates to your UK assets, with a will in Spain relates to your Spanish assets. All right. Now, also, the two reasons are A, because if you haven't got a Spanish will, then you may have to wait. Well, you won't because you won't be here, but the person who's claiming the inheritance may have to wait for probate in the UK. There could be all sorts of problems. It could take a long time to claim whatever inheritance they want here in Spain. Also, obviously, Spanish inheritance law is completely different than UK law. And being a UK citizen or from somewhere else, if you have a Spanish will, you can, and you're a resident here, you can apply the law of your country of origin. So as a Brit, you can decide how you distribute the inheritance, where Spanish inheritance law is slightly different. They have a scale of where it needs to go, and they're virtually forced to leave assets to people. So that's why you get all these stories of these houses which have like 42 owners and they're just abandoned because no one can get hold of the second brother half removed who's who lives somewhere else. And so yeah, it's always a really good idea to line up a Spanish will and have that, and you can update it and change it at any time. It's done at a notary, so notary does it generally. The notary, we work with a notary in TIMECODES who's very good because they do a dual language will. So what happens in that respect is they get the information, they draw up a will in Spanish, which is the legal part of the will, is the Spanish part. Whatever it says in English isn't the legal part. Whatever happens in the event of somebody passing, they'll always refer back to the Spanish part. But the English part is there. Obviously, if something did happen and one of your members of family would pick up the will, well, they'd have it explained there in English. When you do a will, you take a translator with you if you don't speak Spanish, and they actually sign at the bottom that they have verified. They take responsibility for signing for the translation. They say whatever we've told you on that will is true, and what it says in English is a true reflection.
Excellent. Is this something that we should wait until, like, for example, with Liz and I, should we wait until she's got her TIE, or should we just set one up straight away?
No, I mean, I think it's better. It's obviously better to have an NIE number to relate to the will. So certainly when she's got a TIE, when she's got her NIE number, that's when you want to be looking at getting it. Well, you could get yours. They're not joint, they're individual, so you could get yours now. That wouldn't be a problem. And Liz would need. It'd be better if she related hers to her NIE number when she gets it.
Okay, right. We'll set that up soon then. Anything else? Anything else about wills we need to know?
No, not really. I mean, as I say, there you can renew them at any time and update them at any time at the notary. When you do a will, you only get what they copy a simply of the will. The original will is actually held by the notary itself, not physically now. It's held obviously digitally now in the age we're in. But you get a copy, which then it's always a good idea as well. Just that if you've got an accountant or somebody or a lawyer or somebody looks after your affairs to keep to make a copy of it and give it to somebody, and I always give people folders with a few notes in there, handy documents to keep with a will. I know we spoke about this earlier on. It sounds crazy, but unfortunately last year we had a situation where a couple of people passed, and luckily the folder was there. And it's just got copies of passports, NIE numbers, maybe a padlock, even if it's outdated, all the relevant things in a drawer, and just let your family members know where it is, just in case, because they won't be getting. Obviously, they'll probably have a lawyer to assist them getting in doing the inheritance themselves, but if you've got a folder with all that information, it's really easy for that person to kick off and get started. You know, in a time of stress, you don't want to be scrambling around looking for copies of passports, do you? You know?
Very true. And Liz asks, how much does it cost to make a will?
Normally, your will in a notary will cost between, depending on how many pages, between 40 and 60 euros for the will. And then if you're getting somebody to help you do it and help you write in it, it will be around between 100 and 150 euros. So somebody would charge you probably between 50 and 100 euros to assist in doing the will, depending on how complicated it is.
Mm-hmm. And can you get a joint one, or or do they have to be done individually?
They're done individually.
Okay.
They can be mirrored. They can be mirrored, right? So you give to one gives to the other, but they have to be individual.
And interesting question. Donna says, would you recommend having a will in the UK and in Spain?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, if you've got assets, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And how does that happen when, if the worst comes to the worst, and how does the UK know that you've died?
Well, you'd have to inform them, I suppose. I mean, that's that you get whoever you get a death certificate from Spain when you die, and then that certificate would be sent to the authorities in the UK. It might request a translation. They do come in multi-language form, I believe. Like the birth certificates, and that's how you'd know. So you once you pass here, you get a certificate which proves your family will. And that'd be sent to the UK. Whoever's dealing with the inheritance in the UK will do that side of things. And obviously here in Spain, so whoever's has to take charge of their inheritance here would need to do it here. You have to go, normally it's done by a lawyer, but you would have to go to a notary and you lift, they say you lift the will, and then it's verified by the notary, and if everything's okay, you get a document which then allows the person to continue with the process of, for example, claiming a car. So if you've got a car which is going into your name, you don't have to pay the transfer of ownership tax. If it's an inheritance, you still have to pay fees. If it's a property, the same and stuff like that.
Might be worth having it mentioned on your Spanish will to contact the UK authorities.
Yeah. I mean, you can, as I say, it's I think most people would contact them anyway, wouldn't they? I mean, I can't say I've had too much experience of people dying, touch wood. But in the event that people have passed here, normally the family members request the documents from here and contact the UK authorities if there's things to be done there anyway.
Yeah. Okay. And if that's everything on wills, let's move on to looking ahead at your 2 and 3 year visa extension.
Just with wills, there's something I did want to mention with wills, which is it's a good idea, obviously, as well, just to have a plan in place, like a funeral plan or something, or an insurance, or even a pot maybe of money which is separate, to where you keep your money, just a fund that both of you are have access to, or anybody needs it, because I have been involved, sadly, with things which have happened quite quickly. And the first thing, if something does happen to you, is that people are looking for money or insurance. So, although we're not thinking of that when we first initially come to Spain, me, for example, as a family, we have a Spanish insurance because we've had it for years and years and years and years, which covers us if the unthinkable happens, and funeral costs and just those immediate, things. It doesn't cover legal costs for claiming inheritance, but it does cover, because things happen very quickly here, very quickly. They're already knocking on the door and trying to bury you within a couple of days. So, just if you have it's always a good idea just to look beyond the will and have some form of plan, insurance, or pot of money, because someone will come asking for money, to take you away, to have you, that you've got to have that plan in place, because if not, the first thing that it's not going to be on your mind if the unthinkable happens and someone's saying, well, if you've got no insurance, we need some money.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I know it was the same in Ireland. It was a bit of a shock when we first saw funerals in Ireland. We're used to it being a week or two in between the passing on and the burial, the funeral. But in Ireland, 2 days
Yeah.
maximum, and they're in the ground. So
Yeah,
there you go.
people are going to want a chance to, to get to for family members to come over, for people to sort stuff out. So you've got to put the brakes on, have a good plan in place. And also, if there's money in plan, that's all you need, just to make sure, you're there.
Yeah. So, Barry from Unitech is back. Hello, Barry.
Hey,
Which
mate.
country would it be most advantageous to have the will? Can you leave Spanish property to someone in your UK will, for example, or does it have to be mentioned in the Spanish will?
It has to be mentioned in Spanish will. I have no clue about the UK will, to be honest. I don't know. It would have to be, if you've got Spanish property, it would be good to mention it in your will, unless it's like all assets. So like in my will just says all my assets go to my wife, and if my wife can't take in charge of the inheritance, it goes to my kids, and I have an executor until they're 18. So you don't particularly have to stipulate the exact asset, or you can do if you want to, being a British citizen.
Yeah. And he continues, and are there different rules for someone who has a property in Spain but doesn't live there, so may not have a Spanish will?
No, if you're non-resident, it's always a good idea to have a will as well. The only difference is that it will state on your will that you're a non-resident, and if you become resident, it's a good idea to update that.
Cool. And
obviously, the tax laws might be different.
Oh yeah. And Wendy says, even if you have a Spanish or UK will, you will always be a UK-born citizen regardless of residency after 5 years. So can't the UK will cover overseas assets? So no need for a Spanish will?
Yeah, again, it could do. I always say it's a good idea to get a Spanish will, because that's what they understand here. But then you may have to, under that in that context, wait until the UK will. What's the word I'm looking for? I said it earlier on. Or for it to be reckoned, I'll tell you. I can't remember the word.
Neither can I.
Yeah, it's always advisable to have a Spanish will, because it covers your assets in Spain. If you have a UK will, you may have to wait a time for that to be recognised here.
Right, great stuff. Is that everything about wills? Before I leapt on to the next subject, and then it turned out there was a lot more to say. But anything else before we move on?
Probate is the word I was looking for.
Probate, yes, great word. So
you have to wait for that, and then there has been people who have claimed through their British will their assets in Spain, but as I say, it's always advisable to have a Spanish will.
Great. So preparing for your next visa, do you have to prepare a year ahead? Is that necessary?
Yeah, well, as we say, preparing for your renewal. Renewals are the same basis. We always go back to the same, the same three things of residency, don't we? Where it always is, it's proof of you can economically support yourself, proof you've got healthcare, and proof of where you live. Okay, so that's like the three basics of any residency application and visa application. Obviously, then depending on whatever else, what type of visa residency it is, it encompasses a lot more paperwork. So when you're coming to renew, and we're talking about NLVs now, what you want to do is make sure that your paper trail is, first of all, is good, as you've just spoken about, regarding you actually living in Spain. So, if you're spending your money in Spain, make sure you're using a Spanish card for your Spanish account, your Padron, so you've registered on the Padron. A lot of people who are registering their TIE cards for the first time here with Non Lucrative Visa, they don't request a Padron for that first registration, but then during that first year, they may find their permanent residence where they're going to live. We'll make sure you then get your information updated with the immigration authorities. So you've got your Padron in its correct address, and your TIE card is registered at its correct address. And obviously, with your healthcare, depending on which way you've done your healthcare. So if you've got private healthcare, well, that has to be in place for your renewal, right? And renewed, and you can prove. Normally, evidently, that would normally coincide with the renewal, because you have to have the healthcare in place for your consulate appointment. So it would be a month, a month or two before that you'd have your certificate. So that would come up for renewal. You'd have to have that ready as well. And
Interestingly enough, I'll just skip in there. Our guest next week is going to be talking about health insurance, and the company he works for have started doing this slightly extended health insurance, which means you can have it for the period of when you're applying, but it takes it on with an extra period at the end, so that from the date you arrive, you've got the full 12 months as well. So it might be 14 or 15 months worth. So they're doing a special policy that does that now.
Ah, brilliant. Excellent. Yeah, I know the company. This all came about. They've done very well. If it's a company that I think it is, because they really have adapted, whereas other companies haven't adapted very well to the requirements of non-lucrative visa. When the consulates last year decided they wouldn't accept annually renewable policies from the 1st of January, you had to have full 12 months or more declared at the time of the appointment or at the time you're declaring you're going to enter Spain. Then that to be frank, knackered a lot of health insurance provided, because they all worked. A lot of them worked on an annual renewable basis from the 1st of January, whereas some who worked on the periodic renewals were fines, and there's some companies which have adapted a lot more than others to the paperwork, I can tell you.
Yeah. So,
and I'm sure it'll be the same for the avalanche of NLV renewals with Brits as well next year. You know, you'll find that the companies, as people are learning about renewals, they're adapting their own internal policies and systems and the paperwork.
So yes. Anything else for preparation?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is, and it relates back to something else that we were going to talk about, is obviously getting yourself fiscally set up properly. So taking advice regarding tax, taking advice regarding your income, depending on when you've arrived in Spain, when you have to do your first tax declaration, you know, who should be looking at that for you. So obviously you've got a gestor who looks at yours, because being self-employed and stuff, it's different. If you're not employed, maybe you need like you have assets or a pension from the UK, maybe you need a decent financial advisor. But I think it's a good idea to obviously have your ducks in a row regarding your tax. I say we don't deal with tax, but get somebody, an expert who does, because more and more, especially with the EU, i.e. Irish passports with British relatives, we've had a lot of people who've managed to get an Irish passport and then get themselves with a British relative. We've seen with the applications, they like to see the assets in Spain. They like to see the money in Spain. So, you know, it's always advisable to have, you know, your savings or whatever here. Obviously, you want that to be protected, and you want it to be, you know, taxed in the correct way. So I think it's a good idea for the renewals to prove that you have your assets in Spain, unless obviously it's a pension that's being paid from a different source. In that sense, then you'll have to have proof of that and submit translations. But if it's a base of savings, then it's probably a good idea to have the bulk of it here. But obviously, you're going to need someone to advise you the best way to do that.
Yeah, and I think it's good to have a Spanish bank account with your UK pension coming into, partly because if you've not got more than a certain amount coming in per month into your account, you get bank charges in some banks.
Yeah, again, yeah, I suppose you have to do your research on your banks as well, and I mean, it all relates back to the renewal documents, because you know, and what immigration understands, because you literally, if you have income coming into a Spanish bank account or you have savings in a bank account, as you very well know, you literally walk in there. There's two types of certificates. You ask them for it, they still rubber stamp it, because we love stamps here, and that is accepted. You know, so there's no explanations on that. Yeah, is this the minimum required amount? Yes, it's going in there. Thank you very much. Have your renewal. Now, if you're working on a basis of paperwork from abroad, then you have to give more explanations. They may not accept it if it's not stamped. Well, you know, it's literally only recently we've managed to get two of the consulates to finally give us email confirmation that they'll accept printed bank statements from a UK bank, but they don't have to be stamped, but they still have to be printed by the bank. Now, you know, it's if you come to the renewal, and I had this recently with a golden visa as well, where there was ample amount of money in UK accounts, and we actually had original UK statements, and they just didn't accept them. But the moment that we transferred a lump sum into a Spanish bank and got a certificate, we got the approval back within 3 days. So, you know, more and more and more and more immigration want to see the assets in Spain or the income coming into Spain.
Yes, and Wendy has a question. She has a property in Spain bought pre-Brexit. It has an address in the deeds and a slightly different one on the bills. You are saying, oh, that should be put. You are saying, put your house address on forms. Would it be the one that's on the deeds?
On the application forms, you mean? Yeah, be the one. Yeah, that's depends really.
It's not going to agree with the one that on the bills that you're giving, because you're giving those bills as proof.
Right,
proof of address, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
I found this tricky. I don't know on some things whether to put. I mean, on YouTube, for example, I had to put my address, and I thought I'll put the real address because they might need something official, like my padron to prove where I live or something like that. So I put the real address, and then realised that they were sending me something in the post, which I had to go down to the post office every single day and see if it was there. Rather than if I'd put my postal address on, it would have been a lot easier. And Wendy's put that as well. Also, like you, we are in the Guilds. That means the Campo, so no postal service. So also we'll have a PO address. So it's really confusing. I agree, it is.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, it's a tough one because the addresses you've obviously got to be able to try and relate the address, the postal address, to the property. You know, we always advise people who have got a property in Spain where they're making an application to get an up-to-date notice simply to prove that they are still the owners. It's the registration document which proves you're still the owner of the property and the property has no charges against it. But obviously, if that notice simply bears absolutely no relevance to the postal address, then it's quite tough to prove that there's a correlation between the two. What you may find is that on things like your IBI bill and maybe other bills that you get for the property, they will carry the cadastral number, which then you can make the relationship there as well.
And maybe you can, I don't know if you can do this at Correos, but maybe they can give you an official stamped form to say you're using this PO box address, but this is your real address and we've seen your padron. I don't know if they've got one of those kind of things.
No, not really. I've recently went through it myself, to be honest. We had to register an apartado because we don't receive mail at a property that we went to, that we live at, and all they did was they did write the official address and said, if anything turns up here for your address, we'll put it in your apartado. But they would only take the official address of the property, not the one which we would consider would be the postal address, which they never find anyway.
Yeah, there's that as well. Isn't it's I've seen so many people commenting on I've got a different address with different people, with the electricity company and the post office. The post office can't find you if you put the address that you've got on your electricity bill and things like that.
The bills. I mean, again, it's down to the person who registers it. We've got like the electricity. I have no clue where they got the address from on our electricity bill for the new house. There's no relevance to anything. I'm looking at it going, what's that?
Yeah. Sometimes they change it. I used to work for the electricity company in the UK, and when they'd register, when the builders would register an address, it's just sometimes when they number the houses, and sometimes even the street names get changed at the last minute when they actually start selling the houses. But I think it's even more complicated in Spain. I've known that street, numbers of houses on streets have suddenly been switched round, and you might get a notification in Spanish through the post one day. Suddenly, a house number is different, and it must really confuse the postman.
Yeah, it's a constant battle, the addresses in Spain, isn't it?
Yeah. So Wendy says maybe I'll go with the padron address. And what's SUMA?
That's IBI. So SUMA is your tax, people relate. SUMA is Alicante way, and that is the organisation which is in charge of getting your IBI and car tax. So, but people normally relate to the tax, they call it SUMA instead of IBI.
Okay, that's handy to know. That's why I hadn't heard of it then.
Yeah,
So I'm not
so
in
it's
that
like
area.
Patronato. You know, we have the Patronato here in Malaga that runs some of the town's tax. It's the same.
Yeah. Oh, it's a question from Barry again. This is off subject, but why not? Regarding banks, are the interest rates in Spain as bad as they are in the UK for savers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same. Same in same across Europe, I think, because inflation isn't all that high at the moment. I know it's kind of rising a bit in the UK. I don't know in Spain.
Inflation's gone up a lot, and that's why print went up, but the interest in banks is still rubbish.
Yeah, yeah.
Unfortunately.
Okay, yeah. Anything else about preparation? Well, I can see we're rapidly approaching the 11 o'clock here in Spain, and you need to go, don't you, soon?
Yeah, there's just a couple of things there. So yeah, a minute, we're talking about learning Spanish here. So I've got my notes, as you can see.
Well done. Nice to be prepared.
Insurances, evidently check. You make sure your insurances are all up to date and stuff. It's a tough one. Know where to go, what to do, but obviously your car insurance, make sure that is correct, and your life insurance and your house insurance. A lot of people forget about house insurance, just to make sure that they're all correct, and that's something that you have to look at. Your renewal
swapping your driving license as well, or not.
Yeah, so we've got just going with the insurance. Just remember to remind yourself, if you are going to look for another policy before the renewal date, there's generally a penalty period beforehand, so you need to give them warning. So just check all that. So if you're going to go and change your car insurance or whatever, they say, well, no, we've already taken the money, whatever. Give yourself plenty of warning to search the market. As such, we spoke about funeral plans, driving licenses. Yes. So, just a quick comment on what was been going on social media. Now, there's a lot of people saying, "Well, it looks like that's it now. The end of February, we're going to have to take a test." Congratulations to Ruth, one of our clients, and she sometimes watches the channel. Was actually just cracked on, passed the test anyway, so she'll now hold British and Spanish licenses. Well done. But that wasn't the case. The DGT were just reiterating the current agreement that's in place. There may still be an agreement. They weren't saying that that's it, it's done, or they just took a long time to actually publish it on their website. I saw that got shared on a popular Facebook page, and I think it might have been misinterpreted, but we still hold hope that there will be an agreement. And talking about addresses and driving licenses, there was one thing that I wanted to mention, actually, because it happened this week in the office, was when people did their initial registration of the driving license, some people would have only got 2 years on their license within the withdrawal agreement, depending on how long they've been residents, and et cetera, et cetera. So there'll be a few people coming up for renewal now, right? So the withdrawal agreement people who had Spanish driving licenses, or people who have just been registered coming up for renewal, that is done at a medical centre, specialised medical centre. But for those of you who had problems with the address the first time, because the DGT would only send out the licenses to your Padron address, and there was all sorts of licenses that ended up all over the place, and people didn't get them for in a year because they bounced back to the DGT. They had to go and pick them up and stuff like this. We had a renewal go through a couple of weeks ago, and I spoke to the medical centre when the lady was there, and she said, "Look, I just don't receive post. There's no point you putting it to my postal address." And the guy at the medical centre said, "Oh, it's okay. We'll put your office address down." I said, "Well, can you do that?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah, we can do that." So I said, "So for the first registration for the DGT, you can't put a correspondence address, but you guys can without changing her driver's registration with the DGT." He went, "Yeah, of course we can." Okay, fair enough. Here's the address then. So I gave it to him, and lo and behold, it turned up the day before yesterday. So it seems that when you come to renewal process, if you had a problem the first time receiving your driving license, when you do renew at the medical centre, you can give a correspondence address, and it will go there, and that doesn't affect your actual address where you registered with the DGT.
Very handy. Should we
Yeah.
talk about the S1 as well? Is that we've not mentioned that? We've mentioned healthcare insurance, but some people will be switching from having private health insurance to having the S1.
Sure, yeah, and I mean, if you have got if you've got a non-lucrative visa, we've probably got a whole show on S1, the way it's all changed last week and stuff, last year. Now, as we know, that the Manchester and Edinburgh have said now they're going to accept them, but obviously you have to get an S1, has to go to Spain first, and then go to your appointments. Lots to talk about there. But in the scenario that you're actually already in Spain and you've registered for your TIE card, you've got private health care, but you qualify for an S1, you've got your S1 because they're sending to Spain, you really need to get that registered as soon as possible with the Social Security. So to do that, here in Malaga, they actually have an email which you can actually use instead of going to an appointment, and they're efficient in receiving it, but they are taking 3, 4, 5 months to come through. And you will need, for your S1 registration, your TIE card, not the resguardo. It's better to have the actual card in your hand, front and back. Your padron dated within 90 days, and a copy of your passport and your S1. And that either needs to be handed to the Social Security office or emailed to them. For people who are beneficiaries of someone else on an S1, you have to prove that connection with if it's a marriage, for example, a marriage certificate. A marriage certificate is from the UK, everything has to carry an apostille and the translation. What we have seen is problems with the UK recognising people as healthcare beneficiaries who are unmarried, and then when they get to Spain, difficulties with them registering the S1. So, i.e., you may have a partner who qualifies because they're of pensionable age. You may be under the pensionable age, but qualify. The UK recognise you as, although you're not married, as partners, and they'll give you an S1 on the basis that you live with your partner. When you come to Spain, if you can't provide a marriage certificate, then they won't accept it.
Right. So anything else finally? We're almost at 11 o'clock now.
No, I think that's it for the time being. I think we've covered everything. Evidently, if there's any more questions, people just stick them in, and then we'll just answer them in another show next time.
Absolutely, yeah. So yeah, Chris, you keep an eye on the comments as well, or I'll pass them on to you. I've got some other things to say, but I'll let Chris go first. And so stick around, everybody, just for another 5 minutes while I cover any things that are personal to me.
Are we giving away any prizes today?
Oh, I forgot about the prizes. Yeah. Who's been the best commenter? Is it Wendy?
Yeah. Did we not give Wendy a prize? What do we give in? Who is it we gave a prize last week? I sent some out.
Was that Lee and Wendy?
Yeah, I think so. I think I already sent a prize to Lee.
Oh,
and Barry.
We've already sent one to Barry.
Yeah.
And I need somebody to send the T-shirt to, preferably somebody that's not in the UK, if that's at all possible, because you're going to end up having to pay for it if I do that. Yeah. So which of you isn't in the UK? I'll have to have a look at the list after the show.
Okay. I'll let you decide and tell me who's going to get a prize this week.
Yeah, there's Carolyn Theriot. She came on, and I know she's in Spain. So maybe we'll send her the T-shirt. I'll get her address later on.
Brilliant.
Okay. So, well, that's all the questions with you, Chris. Thanks again.
No worries.
And I'll see you in, I don't know if we're going to do it because we've had 2 consecutive weeks, and now I'm going to have somebody else on. I don't know if you want to come back in 2 or do you want to leave it for 3? We can talk about that.
Yeah, I'll let you guys decide. You might be a bit bored of me now, so.
Not at all. I mean, the good thing is having you on, we can answer lots of viewers' questions about general stuff. You know, if we have somebody who specialises, like next week on health insurance, they might not know as much about other stuff. Although I think Lyndon Greensit, who is our guest next week, is quite knowledgeable about a lot of things. He runs the Go Spain Facebook page, which is really good and has lots of advisors on there.
He does. It's great Facebook group as well.
Yeah,
people are moving over, so.
Yeah. Okay then. So it's 11.
Right.
We'll say
I'm gonna go.
goodbye. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Take
Cheers.
care now.
Okay.
Bye. There we go. So a few other things I have got to say. Let's see. There are, you're talking about me obviously being self-employed. Starting up a business is really difficult, even when you're on your home turf, in your home country. But starting up in a foreign country, you've got to think language is really, really important. Learning Spanish is really, really important, and it's not always easy to get on the free lessons list. We tried to do that, but we can't get on until next September. So we're having to take private lessons. But that's fair enough. I'm quite happy to pay out for private lessons because it's very, very important. My personal experience of the way it's going for me is I've got this combination of excitement and urgency and uncertainty and dread with this challenge of starting up. It's been a bit strange. And I can imagine people who are on the non-lucrative visa coming over to Spain, and it's a bit like being on holiday to start with. You may have lots of little paperwork things to sort out, but because you've not got a job, then you've got time to start up hobbies. You can go on walks with people and join clubs and societies and all that kind of thing, and do lots of Spanish lessons and meet lots and lots of people. But for me, it's not been as much of a holiday as soon as all of the paperwork has done for us. And because there's COVID and not being able to meet as many people, not being able to smile at people going up and down the streets, it's been a bit less of a holiday. And of course, we came heading into the winter as well. So it's not so touristy, not so many people out on the streets. It's not as warm. So it's been a bit of a different experience for us. And not that it's not been pleasant. We can still sit outside in the sunshine and have a meal, for example, and it's a beautiful place to be. And we are going on walks. But so language, that's been important. And we talked about the mask barrier, COVID. It's been a difficult time to move, and I guess that everybody will experience that. But in Spain, fortunately, you can still go into restaurants and cafes. And hopefully, once this winter cold has gone and once COVID has hopefully gone back down again and we've got rid of the latest variant, then things will open up and we'll be able to be free of masks, at least on the streets, for quite a while. Other things that I was going to be doing, I was supposed to be recording a video of me singing through a PA system to show people what I can do in order to get gigs. But with COVID and this cold, as you can probably hear, I'm completely stuffed up. I for a start, I can't get into a venue really to do the recording, not with COVID rules, and it would sound really rubbish anyway. I'd be singing like this. So, and also I can't go into old people's homes and do what I did back in Ireland and the UK, which is sing songs so that it improves their memory, people with Alzheimer's, and that's a really, really useful thing to do and a lovely thing to do. And I can't do it. I can't go and meet these people. I can't go and meet the people who run these homes. So it's kind of a bit of a limbo thing going on. I'm sure you'll all recognise that COVID's been a bit of a limbo for everybody, and it's one of the advantages I have with the sort of things I do is that I've got a lot of irons in the fire, but prioritising which ones to do, it has been really, really tricky. The ones that can earn me the money the quickest are the gigs, and I've already said that that's tricky. But the the ones that will earn me more money in the long term, like this channel, for example. I mean, it's only just been ready to take advertising revenue, but it's got a worldwide market, so there's much more potential for this to be a success for me. And hopefully, in the long term, this will be what I do, and the rest of it will be relaxing. So it's a balancing act for people like me between creating future earnings and surviving in the short term. And having multiple irons in the fire is a brilliant way of making sure there's always some income. But it's easy to get bogged down with all of those, being a jack of all trades. We've been talking, Liz and I, about buying a house to generate income as a holiday rental as well. And we've got to balance that out with making sure we've got enough savings. We don't want to spend all of the savings and then be stuck in a very difficult situation with lots of bills for self-employment, and not having not knowing exactly when we're going to build up enough income to survive, and then more to have a savings. So lots of things that we have to take into account, but the biggest one has been that suddenly you're on your feet in a foreign country. You've gone through the majority of the paperwork that you need to register here, and then suddenly you're faced with the reality of you being in a very different place. And one thing I've realised is that people are really the same all around the world. I don't mean that they're exactly the same. I find Spanish people really, really lovely, just as I found Irish people. But there are lovely people and really awful people wherever you go. And there's obviously a lot there in between. It's not black and white. And so if you've come to a different country like Spain thinking that everybody says Spanish people are really welcoming and they're really lovely, well, you'll find the same kind of people that you find everywhere, and that might be a shock to some of you. So don't expect that. If you're running away from awful people in your own country and you're expecting to find no trolls at all, then you're going to be disappointed. But on a happy note, you're in this kind of environment. You're in, you can't see it from here, but as I keep saying, you can see the mountains up there, and there's a completely blue sky today, even though it's the middle of January. And I recorded a video of walking with our dog Luna up in the hills, and it just looks absolutely fantastic. So what I'm going to do is actually put that little video together with some music that I've written and put it out on this channel and see if any of you like it. So that is all, I think, from me. I won't rabbit on too long. If any of you have questions, then just ask in the comments below. As I said, we still have this. Oh no, this is going to Carolyn. Send us your address, Carolyn. On you've got my WhatsApp, and we still have some Upsticks goodies, the folders that we showed last time. So I'm going to pick somebody as the winner for that. If you're asking questions on the recording of the video, then I'll include those of you who ask questions in the comments as well over the next week. And so we'll decide who's getting the prize by the end of the week. And that is, I'm just looking at my notes. That, I believe, is everything. As I said before, next week we're going to be talking to Lyndon Greensit all about health insurance. And that's really, really exciting and interesting, because every time I see Lyndon talking about it on the Facebook group, there's lots of things that you need to know. And there's lots of things that people write in the comments when they're answering for other people that are just wrong, and Lyndon's always having to correct and make sure that the details are right. There's lots of little details that are going to be very important to all of you. So that's at our regular time. Join us of 9 a.m. if you're in the UK or Ireland, or 10 a.m. if you're in Spain. And of course, don't forget to check out U2 Yoga. That's Liz's very own channel, and you can get free yoga and meditation classes on there. So you can relax, you can chill, And there's also U2 aromatherapy that you can find. And of course, the merchandise page. I'm going to be designing a new t-shirt, I think, and I think you'll all like that. All of the links to those things can be found in the video description below. I'd like to say thank you very much to all of those people who've joined us in the live chat. Donna Fryer, Barry from Unitech, Wendy Jackson, Lee, and who else have we had? Carolyn, and of course my lovely wife Liz on U2 Yoga. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. Please subscribe and click on the bell if you haven't already. Ding! Peace and love. Goodbye for now. And here we'll have the little theme music to see you out. See you all next week. Bye.